If you're looking for an amazing off-field DPS, someone that can trigger so many great reactions in the game, can batter your entire team, is great for exploration, and is free to play friendly, then I think Yelan is going to be great for you. With Natlan being right around the corner and Yelan rerunning in 4.8, I think this is the perfect time for both new and veteran players to pick up a Yelan if you like her and are in need of her specialties. Yelan is a Hydro sub DPS that provides a ton of single target Hydro damage and is amazing at helping you trigger reactions such as Vape, Electrocharge, Hyper Bloom, or Freeze so long as your characters are using their normal attacks. She also provides a buff to your units and helps enable one of the strongest duos in the game, Xingqiu and Yelan, known as the double Hydro core. First off, I want to talk about why Yelan is so free to play friendly and very easy to use. Her best 4-star bow is a free one that you get for completing the Archon quest, the Favonius War Bow. And it's even better when you gather refinements. But Yelan's damage scale is primarily on HP. And for those who don't know what she does, I'll quickly explain it. Her skill is a dash that when you touch an enemy, it'll entangle them in her Hydro juices. She's able to entangle multiple enemies, and after the skill is done, it will explode, dealing Hydro damage based on Yelan's max HP. Now for her ult, she will pose for the camera, dealing Hydro damage, and will create a mini Hydro dice. This dice will launch jolts of Hydro at an enemy whenever you use a basic attack every 1 second. In Razor language, her E is a very nice dash that will damage enemies who have been touched by it, and her Q will fire off Hydro attacks with whoever is on field doing their normal attacks. Really, using Yelan is very simple and easy, and she doesn't take up a lot of field time on her own. Her first passive gives her more HP the more elemental types are on her team. This passive is nice, but it's not something that you usually strive to max out. And her second passive is incredibly strong, in which whenever you ult, your on-field character will gain increased damage. This damage buff will increase by 3.5% every second, capping out at a 50% damage buff. So towards the start of the ult, the buff isn't a lot, but by the end of the buff, it'll add a lot more damage to your unit. It's also worth noting that if you switch your units, this doesn't reset the buff and it'll just continue to stack until the damage is maxed. So if you ult with Yelan, swap to your supports, by the time your DPS comes in, they will be receiving the max buff damage. As for her last passive, she'll gain 25% more expedition rewards in leeway for 20 hours. And finally, her normal attacks, which for the most part you can neglect, however they do have a special ability, which whenever she's out of combat for at least 5 seconds, her bracelet will glow, causing your next charge shot to be enhanced with damage scaling on max HP. For the most part, this isn't really worth using and you can save your resources. However, if you plan on getting C6, then this will come in handy. Just prioritize her ult and her skill for her talents nonetheless. As for her Ascension mats, she needs the Runic Fane from the Chasm boss and the Star Conscience from the beaches of Liyue. Now let's talk about how good Yelan is as a whole, and is she still worth the pull? First off, I want to talk about her weaknesses. She is primarily a single target damage dealing unit, with her E giving you some AoE. She has a high burst energy cost that is essential to her kit, making the Favonius Bow an excellent choice. Also, while she applies Hydro, in some teams you might need another Hydro unit to assist in proccing other reactions. And she is purely an offensive unit. Unlike Xingqiu, who applies Hydro, does a decent amount of damage, provides interruption resistance, and adds a small amount of healing. With all that being said, I still think that going into Natlan, and even now with the current meta, if you're someone who's interested in Yelan, you should go for her. She is a fantastic unit at C0, capable of opening up so many teams for your account, and even by herself, her damage is great, all while battering your entire team, which just means she'll help recharge their ultimates. Not to mention, she makes traveling in the overworld much easier. Now, when it comes to building Yelan, like I said, she needs HP, but she also needs a lot of energy recharge, enough so that every rotation she has her burst up. With a 70 cost ult, you're going to need quite a bit of ER, but you can gain energy from other sources like your skill, and this also makes Favonius passive come in handy, as at refinement 5, crits will generate 6 energy for your Yelan and the team. So typically when building Yelan with a Favonius bow, you want around 200% ER. This includes if you're using Xingqiu with a Fav or Sac sword. Without him or another Hydro user, and for around 220 to 230. Now for HP, a good amount for damage is around 30 to 40k. Any more and you might start getting diminishing returns, and that's when you should start prioritizing either more ER or crit. And just to reiterate, you built so much HP on Yelan because that's what her talents skill off of for damage. Meaning getting her to level 90 is very important. Just also note that crit is very good on her as well. And if you're running Favonius, you'll want a good amount of crit rate for the extra energy. If you're looking for specifics, on a Favonius build, you can typically get away with running an HP Sands as long as you're getting some ER from your substats. And your circlet can either be crit rate or crit damage, whichever one you need more. An HP circlet can work as well if you're lacking in HP, just make sure you're not overcapping on HP. And typically for your goblet, you want to run hydro bonus damage unless you got amazing step stats on an HP one. And also just make sure that you are running the Emblem of Severed Fate set in Inazuma, as both the 2-piece and the 4-piece set greatly benefit Yelan in her energy and damage potential. Just don't feel pressure to get perfect stats with your Yelan. As long as she has enough ER to burst and 30k HP, she will perform well in her teams. Now that she's built, how are her teams? Considering that all of Genshin's elements have been released with the Sumeru expansion, I doubt that Natlan will bring anything that really kills off her usefulness, meaning that reactions such as Electrocharge, Hyperloom, Vape, and even Freeze, Yelan will still excel in. Now, I've been mentioning pairing her with Xingqiu, and this is primarily due to the fact that they just work extremely well together and play off of each other. First off, both are Hydro units with high energy costs, meaning not only does your party gain the Hydro resonance, which benefits not only Yelan, but many of the Fontaine units, but these two combined will be generating a ton of Hydro particles, thus cutting down their individual needs for energy, all while applying a lot of Hydro on an enemy and dishing out damage. That doesn't mean that you always need to stick them together though, as Yelan without Xingqiu is still amazing. The duo is just a core meta unit that's great in teams like Hu Tao and Arlecchino Vape. You can run Taser teams with Fissure or Raiden, Hyperbloom teams with Alhaitham, Bloom teams, or even Freeze teams. You can remove Xingqiu and replace him with either another Hydro unit or any other sub/support of your choosing. It's just this pair is really strong. And at times with heavy pyro applicators like Hu Tao and Arlecchino, you might need more Hydro, and that's where Xingqiu comes in. But in most cases, you will see how strong Yelan is. Now with the Nation of Fontaine, Yelan is so amazing with many of them. Ryosli, Farina, Navia, Chiori, Arlecchino, Claren. In no way has Fontaine benched Yelan, and she's really more valuable than ever. That being said, if you're not a fan of Yelan, or you're happy with how your account performs, then don't feel pressure to pull for her. At the end of the day, she is a unit. There are many other strong characters in this game, and pull for who you like. But if you're focused on meta and want the best units and teams, then I'd say go for Yelan. Now I actually do want to take the time to talk about Yelan's Constellations. While she is perfectly fine at C0, she's actually the only other character besides my Arlecchino who I got C6 just because I love Yelan and I did see the value in her Constellations, but really her first two, even then, they are not needed at all to clear the content in this game. C1 gives you an extra charge of your E, basically just helps with their energy needs, and it does give you a bit more damage. C2, while you're ulting, it will fire an additional dice every 1.8 seconds that scales off for max HP. This is just a bit more Hydro and just a bit more damage. But if you're someone who does want to vertically invest in Yelan, C1, C2, you can stop there. C4 is actually nice for characters besides Yelan who scale off of HP, as for each enemy marked with her skill, she will increase her team's max HP as well as herself. And C6, it's just a bunch of front-loaded damage, scales off of her HP. Whenever you burst, you kind of just kill everything in the game. It's nice, but like I said, it's not needed. I also just want to reiterate one more time that even with my C6 Yelan, she is still on Favonius Warbow. It's just that strong on her, and I see no reason to even roll for her signature weapon. But if you really want to, you can. It's just Favonius, it's free, and it's really strong. But overall, that's just Yelan. She's a really strong unit, and over time, I think that even with the Natlan characters, she's only going to get stronger from here. Unless, you know, for some reason Hydra just evaporates out of the game, Yelan is still a safe pull, and if you want her, just go for it. But that's all from me. I personally really love Yelan, and I have no regrets in pulling her or her Constellations. Let me know what y'all think. I hope y'all win your 50/50s, and I'll see y'all in the next one for Navia.